November 12, 1943, Hill 730, San Pietro, Infine, Italy. The Italian winter rain fell in sheets, turning the mud of Hill 730 into a quagmire that clung to boots and rifles like a living thing. Obergefreiter Karl Becker, 28, of the 15th Panzer Grenadier Division, huddled in his bunker, the air thick with the stench of wet earth, cordite, and unwashed men. His diary, a battered notebook stuffed in his greatcoat, was his only solace. He scratched a final entry by the dim light of a kerosene lamp. The Americans fight differently than the British or Russians. They bring the firepower of a machine gun nest into every house, every corner. Their automatic weapons never stop firing. 3 days later, advancing U.S. forces found his body, the diary clutched in his frozen hand, a testament to the terror unleashed by a weapon that defied Wehrmacht doctrine, the Thompson submachine gun. Becker had just survived his third clash with American assault troops wielding Thompsons, their drum magazines and blistering rate of fire transforming close-quarters combat into a one-sided slaughter. The 1st Battalion, 143rd Infantry Regiment of the 36th Infantry Division had taken San Pietro after 6 days of house-to-house fighting. Of 280 German defenders, only 46 survived to be captured. The rest fell to a storm of .45 caliber bullets, a preview of what happened when American infantry doctrine met the Thompson in the confined hell of Italian mountain villages, a combination that shattered German assumptions about warfare. This wasn't just superior firepower, it was a philosophical revolution in small unit tactics, enabled by an industrial juggernaut capable of producing complex, expensive automatic weapons in staggering quantities. The Wehrmacht, with its emphasis on marksmanship and ammunition conservation, was unprepared for the American approach. Spray bullets like water from a hose, advancing behind walls of lead that made defensive positions untenable. The Thompson, dismissed by German observers in the 1920s as a gangster's toy, had become the infantryman's equalizer, a symbol of U.S. abundance and ingenuity that haunted the Axis from Tunisia to the Rhine. The Thompson's humble origins. The Thompson story begins not on the battlefields of 1943, but in the roaring 1920s of Prohibition-era America. John T. Thompson, a U.S. Army ordnance officer, envisioned a trench broom, a handheld machine gun to sweep enemies from World War I trenches. Born in 1860, Thompson had revolutionized small arms with inventions like the .45 ACP cartridge, but the armistice of 1918 killed demand for his submachine gun. Undeterred, he founded Auto Ordnance Corporation, producing the model 1921 Thompson. At $200 per unit, $3,000 in today's money, it was exorbitant. Its 100-round drum magazine and 800 rounds per minute rate of fire, making it a favorite of Chicago gangsters like Al Capone. German military observers in the 1920s scoffed at reports of the Thompson. The MP-18, their World War I submachine gun, was simpler and cheaper to produce. An expensive curiosity, one Berlin report concluded, impractical for military use due to cost and ammunition consumption. Germany's doctrine favored the Karabiner 98K bolt-action rifle. Accurate, disciplined, conserving ammo. Submachine guns like the MP-40 were for specialists, assault pioneers, paratroopers. The idea of arming regular infantry with automatics was dismissed as wasteful. But America's industrial landscape was changing. By 1939, as Europe burned, auto ordnance simplified the design. The M1921A1 cut costs to $209, but wartime demand slashed it further. The M1, 1942, and M1A1, 1943, eliminated the blish lock, cuts compensator, and cooling fins, dropping the price to $45 per unit, a 77.5% reduction. Stamped parts replaced machined ones, production soaring. Auto Ordnance and Savage Arms churned out 500,000 in 1942 alone, totaling 1,387,134 M1 M1A1s by war's end. The Thompson, once a luxury, became a staple.
Early clashes in North Africa. The Thompson's battlefield debut came during Operation Torch, November 1942. The 509th Parachute Infantry Regiment and U.S. 2nd Corps landed in North Africa with M1A1 Thompsons issued to NCOs and select troops, a density that stunned German intelligence. At Cassino Pass, January 1943, a 10th Panzer Division officer reported, "The Americans' machine pistols fire without pause, multiple per squad. Our riflemen are suppressed before they can aim." The Thompson's specs were terrifying. 600 to 700 rounds per minute M1A1, 920 feet per second muzzle velocity, 20 30-round box magazines, drums rare in combat due to jamming. At 10.8 pounds, it was heavy but balanced. Its .45 ACP round delivering devastating stopping power under 50 yards, 90% of infantry engagements. German soldiers armed with 5-round K98K rifles, 15 rounds per minute, couldn't compete. The MP40 at 700 rounds per minute was lighter, 8.9 pounds, but used 9mm ammo with less punch, and Germany produced only 910,368 MP38/40s total versus 1.7 million Thompsons. In Tunisia, GIs learned the Thompson's quirks. Its recoil, managed by a vertical foregrip, allowed controlled bursts. Training emphasized marching fire, advancing while firing to suppress. Germans, trained for precise shots, were overwhelmed. A prisoner from the 15th Panzer Grenadiers confessed, "Multiple machine pistols per squad, it's like facing a storm of lead." The Italian Proving Ground. The Italian campaign, September 1943 to May 1945, was the Thompson's crucible. Mountainous terrain, medieval villages, and fortified lines like Gustav favored defenders. But the Thompson flipped the script. At the Rapido River, January 1944, U.S. assault boats crossed under Thompson fire. German survivors from the 15th Panzer Grenadiers reported, "Americans advanced firing continuously, multiple guns per boat. Our positions were suppressed before we could respond." The 4 battles of Monte Cassino, January-May 1944, showcased this. Elite Fallschirmjäger, paratroopers, defended the monastery heights. American assaults on Hill 593 involved marching fire. Troops advanced spraying bursts, targeting windows and doors whether occupied or not. Germans, with 1 MG42 per squad, couldn't match the volume. A Fallschirmjäger veteran recalled, "The Thompson's thunder was endless. We couldn't man our guns." At Anzio, January 1944, Thompsons dominated the beachhead stalemate. Surrounded for 4 months, U.S. troops used them for bunker clearing. German counterattacks faltered against curtains of fire. In urban fights, the Thompson's heavy .45 ACP smashed through doors and walls, its sound a deep percussive hammer becoming a harbinger of doom. The Anzio perimeter's Mussolini Canal sector saw intense close-quarters battles. The 3rd Infantry Division, receiving extra Thompsons, held lines where Germans infiltrated to 30 meters. Multiple Thompsons per squad created kill zones, halting advances. German reports noted, "Americans fire multiple bursts before we see targets. Our rifles are useless in such volume." Psychological warfare and adaptation. The Thompson's roar was psychological warfare. Its deeper report, versus the MG42's high-pitched buzz, announced American presence with authority. Germans dubbed it the Chicago Typewriter, propaganda portraying U.S. soldiers as gangsters, but frontline troops knew better. In the Hurtgen Forest, September 1944, Thompsons sprayed treetops, detonating German grenades in branches. Forest density favored close fights, where the Thompsons' punch through undergrowth outmatched the MP40's 9mm. German doctrine adapted slowly. Traditional tactics, rifle lines supported by MG42s, crumbled under Thompson's suppression. New guidelines emphasized dispersed positions, long-range engagements, and mines to channel attacks. But with 80% of divisions horse-drawn by 1944 and ammo shortages, adaptation faltered. Captured Thompsons were prized, but .45 ACP scarcity limited use. On the Eastern Front, Thompsons via Lend-Lease aided Soviets, but U.S. forces in Europe maximized its potential. In Normandy, June 1944, 82nd and 101st Airborne dropped with Thompsons for NCOs and scouts. Rangers at Pointe du Hoc used them for bunker clearing. Heinrich Severloh, the Beast of Omaha, recalled, "Americans reached the seawall firing short bursts, multiple per squad. It was like facing a platoon of machine guns."
Industrial might behind the firepower. The Thompson's dominance stemmed from U.S. production. From $200 in 1921 to $45 in 1944, costs plummeted via simplification. Stamped parts, no Blischlock or Cutz compensator. Auto ordnance and Savage arms hit 500,000 in 1942, totaling 1.7 million wartime. U.S. doctrine pooled Thompsons at company level, 6 per rifle company from June 1944, flexible for assaults. Marines issued them to squad leaders from July 1942, highest density in infantry. Germany's MP-38-40 production reached 910,368, STG-44 425,977. Total submachine guns under 1.4 million versus US 2.3 million, including M3 grease guns. Ammo disparity was vast. US 47 billion small arms rounds, Germany 2.5 billion annually at peak. A Thompson burst consumed more ammo than a German squad's daily allotment. Training amplified this. U.S. recruits fired hundreds of rounds in basic, mastering instinct shooting. Germans, ammo-starved, fired minimally. This gap showed. Americans cleared jams blindly, reloaded mid-sprint. Germans hesitated. Heroic tales defined the Thompson. In Sicily, July 1943, Sergeant John Tommy Gun McGraw of the 45th Infantry Division cleared a pillbox, killing 12 Germans in seconds, his burst suppressing the nest for grenades. At Anzio, Private First Class William Wild Bill Donovan of the 3rd Infantry held a trench against 20 Germans, firing 600 rounds in minutes, killing 8 and routing the rest. In the Bulge, December 1944, Corporal Jimmy Hale of the 101st Airborne at Bastogne used his Thompson to repel a Panzer Grenadier assault, firing bursts that pinned 30 Germans in a ditch until artillery finished them. The Hurtgen Forest sought Thompsons in forest patrols, where a squad's multiple guns created walls of lead through undergrowth. Pacific Marines adapted Thompsons for caves. Bursts into openings flushed Japanese defenders. On Iwo Jima, February 1945, Sergeant Mike Strank's squad used them to clear bunkers, saving dozens in close fights. The enemy's terror. German prisoners consistently reported the Thompson's psychological toll. Interrogations at Gafsa, Tunisia, January 1943, revealed shock at multiple machine pistols per squad. At Cassino, Fallschirmjäger survivors described endless thunder suppressing positions before assaults. Propaganda called Thompsons gangster guns, but troops feared them as death hoses. In the Rhine crossings, March 1945, U.S. engineers crossed under Thompson fire, suppressing German banks. At Remagen, where the Ludendorff Bridge was captured intact, Thompsons cleared pillboxes, their bursts echoing over the water. Japanese observers in the Pacific reported to Berlin. Marines advanced firing continuously, multiple per squad. These confirmed the Thompson's universal dread.
Post-war echoes. The Thompson influenced post-war designs. The AK-47, partly inspired by U.S. automatics, combined its firepower with rifle range. Bundeswehr doctrine, formed in 1955, emphasized squad automatics, acknowledging Thompson lessons. In Korea, 1950 to 1953, Thompsons halted Chinese human wave attacks, their bursts turning advances into massacres. German observers with UN forces noted, "Same tactics as against us, unbeatable in close quarters." Reunions of Wehrmacht veterans often featured Thompson tales. At a 1967 Africa Corps gathering, a mechanic recalled, "It sprayed bullets like rain. We feared it more than rifles." The "terrible Thompson gun" quote, though unverified, captures the sentiment. The industrial juggernaut. The Thompson success was industrial. U.S. factories produced 1.7 million, peaking at 500,000 in 1942. Cost reductions from $200 to $45 came from stamped parts and simplification. Germany's MP-40, 910,368 total, was cheaper but fewer. It's 9mm less potent than .45 ACP. U.S. ammo production, 47 billion rounds, supported the Thompson's hunger. Germany's 2.5 billion annually couldn't. Training disparities amplified this. Americans fired hundreds of rounds in basic, Germans conserved every cartridge. The Thompson symbolized America's arsenal of democracy, expensive yet expendable, complex yet mass-produced. It educated Germans on industrial warfare. Wars weren't won by spirit, but by factories. Legacy of fire. The Thompson's impact endures. It revolutionized squad tactics, proving distributed firepower beat concentrated machine guns. Post-war, assault rifles like the M16 echoed its philosophy. In Vietnam, Thompson saw limited use, replaced by lighter M3s, but Tommy gun remained slang for submachine guns. Veterans' memoirs, like those from the 36th Division, detail its role. It turned hills into fortresses, villages into graveyards. The Thompson wasn't just a weapon, it was a force multiplier, a symbol of abundance that broke the Wehrmacht's will. German soldiers facing its hammer learned precision lost to volume, skill to industry. The shock was total, the lesson eternal.